And we are live, guys, to a very exciting DCA show today. We have Scott, Wolf of Wall Street. We have Ivan, Morales Master. And, of course, James, Invest Answers, boss of DCA. And we have an action-packed agenda. Remember to ask questions in the comments. We will try to address as many as we can. And we will try to cover a lot of things today. Bitcoin Miami conclusions. What is happening with AI and what does that mean for us as investors? What is happening with Ethereum fork talks, crisis, consensus overload? Vitalik has written a very important letter that doesn't only impact Ethereum, but I think every chain. Very important. Where are we now with all these coins? Does fundamentals matter, or is it only meme coin and narrative and so on? There are big things happening in different regions. France have come out and said they want to be more crypto friendly. US, SEC, what is really going on? Where will the hubs be for the next generation crypto? What's happening with dollar? There's crisis. The 2-year yield is breaking out again. What does it mean for us as Bitcoin crypto investors? Is the halving cycle even alive? And what's happening with the price action? Do we have a head and shoulder top, or is it clear skies ahead still? And any other topic you want discussed from the comments. So thank you guys for being here, and remember to subscribe to these 3 gentlemen's fantastic channels. I listen to all of them. I learn a lot. I think you will too. Links are in the description. Phew, that was a lot.
Fantastic.
Should we dive into the Bitcoin Miami conference? James, Scott, you have followed it very closely. Scott, you had some of your teams there. What happened, really? James, do you want to start?
Yeah, well, first of all, I've watched all the historical conferences ever since I started streaming them. Haven't been to one in person because I spent my life going to conferences, and now I feel like I don't need to anymore. But I think it was kind of sad because I was a little bit excited. And normally I do a recap of every single day with all the pertinent nuggets. I didn't do it this year because I couldn't find any. It was like an album on infinite repeat. You're hearing the same tracks over and over again. Also, I think from a mathematical perspective, the conference was down over 66, 67%. So basically less than a third of people from last year is down. The industry day was down a huge amount. The room was pretty much empty. I think 90% I heard on your show, Scott. And I think the way it was structured was just bad. The attendees, they needed some new people with kind of new rigor, new passion, new learnings. And I didn't get that. There was a little bit of, I sensed a little bit of, infighting, anxiety somehow with some of the people. The tensions were high, and I don't know why that was. It should be a very peaceful, happy event. There were people complaining that it wasn't Bitcoin pure because there was a little shitcoinery happening on the side. It was I saw a couple of panels, and it was just all men. I know a lot of people say there was a lot of ladies there, but the diversity was a little bit mixed compared to the last year. And Saifedean, who was like a rock star to me, I said, well, at least we have Saifedean speaking, Saifedean Ammous, who has one of the best books in the space. And he just read the index of his new book. And that was just weird for me. And then you have kind of toxic maxis kind of trying to sick the SEC on altcoins, and it was just an angry show. I just felt. Anyway, my take overall.
Did I get Eric and Udi? What do you think about that, James? Sorry to interrupt. What do you think about Eric and Udi Wizard panel? Did you see that?
Oh, don't get me started on wizard costumes, because that is just beyond freaking stupid. I mean, it's like, if you have Biden mocking, saying silly things about crypto, but then when you see what should be the pinnacle of crypto in this show, and then you see people dressed as wizards and then saying silly things on stage, it's like, whoever came up with that idea needs to be taken out and taken care of. It was just really awful. I didn't even want to mention that because it was beyond stupid. So the whole thing was just poorly organized. And I think they're moving to Nashville. And that's a sign that even Miami wants nothing to do with them anymore. And Miami is like, wants to be the Bitcoin hub of the world. And they say, get out of here, you guys. So anyway, just from the outside looking in, reading things on Twitter and sentiment from people I know who were there, it was a shit show. Scott? Am I off base?
No, I don't think you're off base at all, unfortunately. And I hate to be sort of dismissive of it. I have been all week. I was actually planning to go until about a week and a half ago. But if my own anecdotal sort of feelings on it, even in advance, are indicative of what other people were feeling, I'm not surprised it was down so massively. I was at Consensus. It was a bit of a letdown. And then Consensus, at least you're allowed to talk about everything that's happening in the crypto ecosystem. Miami, you're just allowed to talk about Bitcoin. And frankly, there's not that much to say about Bitcoin, right? I mean, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, this was a very different ecosystem when things were bigger, when the excitement was, nation state adoption of Bitcoin or strike payments. It's kind of a recycled same narratives every single year with the same huge characters, as you said. And now we don't even have a consistent view of what Bitcoin should be from the Bitcoin community itself, which, by the way, is fine. But when you have infighting among a small community and only that small community is allowed to be represented on stage, you have sort of, just a recipe for a letdown. And I'm not surprised at all. To their credit, listen, David and Mike are my friends, the guys who plan it. I think that they did their best. I can tell you that if you went last year, even though you were only allowed to talk about Bitcoin on stage, if you went into the actual convention room where they had all the booths, everything was represented down to NFT projects, and there was excitement about lots of things. Well, now nobody can legally market in the United States, right? So the big exchanges that were their huge anchor sponsors, they're gone, right? Because they can't be perceived marketing to Americans on American soil. So that's millions of dollars gone. I mean, I literally heard that the bulk of the booths were lawyers and accountants, right? Like how to protect yourself and how to, evade taxes, I guess. I just think that the current situation for the market just made for an impossible situation for them to have a positive experience. And to your point, I think Miami's done with crypto, which is really sad, right? I think they want nothing to do with it. They were dismissive of it. They didn't really make many accommodations, apparently, to make it a positive experience. I think, though, that we'll just sort of look back on this one as a write-off year because crypto's down and the United States is very anti-crypto in rhetoric, and it'll improve in the future.
So I think the reason I wanted to start with this is that, so that's a fact. You all have the same conclusions. But then comes is it due to, I feel it could be due to one of three things. It could be that Bitcoin is kind of getting boring compared to crypto as a whole. Is it like the chain which is the problem? Or is it the geography that is the problem, that America is the wrong place? We'll come back to that, the regions. Or is it that a lot of the investment is moving from crypto over to AI? I've heard that there's been, other people have kind of noticed that a lot of VC interest, for example, they're moving from crypto over to AI as the next thing. So which of these three is it? Or is it all three? What do you guys think? Any takers?
I think that's the perfect recipe that I was mentioning. I think it's just a bad situation all around, and especially when it's Bitcoin only, it just leaves very little left to discuss. I mean, how can you have 3 days of conversations about Bitcoin adoption? Like, I mean, what are you going to talk about?
Why do you guys say that Miami doesn't like Bitcoin? Isn't the mayor still pro-Bitcoin, like the governor, or that has changed? In what way are they repelling? Because it's not like the conference.
I wouldn't say that it's changed. I wouldn't say that it's changed. I believe he's still announced, because obviously it was the Bitcoin conference, that he takes his paycheck in Bitcoin. But Miami Coin was a huge egg on their face. He was a massive supporter of the City Coins project, which launched in Miami. That effectively went to zero. Right. And in that process, we've not heard any more rhetoric about taking tax payments or people taking their salaries and these things. It's just clearly it's diminished. Listen, it's embarrassing to be a massive supporter of crypto in the United States. And if not embarrassing, at least it carries major reputational political risk. Right. So I think that even if someone really supports it, even in government in general, you're not going to hear them talking about it very much. There's just too much risk in coming outward, as a supporter of it. And so I think that Miami's they had their fill. Like they rode that narrative while it was a positive thing, and they're disappearing very quickly now that it's being viewed as a negative.
You guys made a very interesting point about the sponsors, that you cannot have any sponsors in the US because whatever you do, you're going to get rigged by Gary and the SEC because you're marketing to Americans. So they should actually move conference and somewhere else. Maybe to France. I just read like the other day that they're welcoming crypto. If we want to be full crypto, then it's Dubai, of course. But I had the same feeling. I mean, I want to go to Bitcoin conferences, but with all of the sentiment in the US, it's just not, I don't know, it doesn't feel inviting to go to the US. So we should have crypto conferences elsewhere, probably with more sponsors then also, because it's...
Yeah, I mean, last year I went from, I was at Mainnet in Masari Mainnet in New York City, and it was depressing, right? And that was in October before FTX even collapsed, but it was depressing. People were already down about Voyager and Celsius and the increasing environment. And I flew directly to Singapore for Token 2049, and it was like going from a high school football game to the Super Bowl. You went over to Token 2049. The sponsors were everywhere. There was, Formula One cars, and everyone was still excited. So I just think that the United States is just not the place right now to throw something where you expect people to be excited about crypto, when you can just fly over to Singapore, or to your point, Dubai, or one of those places, and have a massive conference where even the regulators and government are supporting you.
Yeah. That's very interesting. So definitely a geographical aspect. The US is probably, hope they come around when they see the competition picking up from other places.
Like Carl says in the chat, we should move around the conference. I've been thinking about it myself when I was walking when it was the conference, because I felt myself that I don't really want to go to US because it's so negative, and now Biden is calling us tax evaders. But we should look at the governments that do the most good for crypto and really adopting it, and move there every year. So it's more like Eurovision. You're like, who's going to be the next host country, and it's always shifting around to spread the movement. So maybe we should shift it. That's something
they are going to do that. So I will say, I think that Bitcoin Nashville is a move to admit that the main conference is not going to be as huge. Last year, they tested Bitcoin Amsterdam. It was 3,000 people. Extremely positive experience, much less stressful, I think, for the organizers. So in my interview with Mike Germano that I did recently, who throws the conference, he said that their end goal is effectively to do mini conferences all over the world. Basically, go to your fans in each jurisdiction, skin it appropriately for those people, and not have the pressure of 35,000 people in one convention center.
Sounds like a much better idea. Let's continue on that topic then. How about, because AI is happening as well, we have to recognize that there's a lot of VC interest that kind of is moving in that direction. But there's also a lot of jobs that's going to disappear. And if there's anyone who's watching who hasn't actually tried the ChatGPT or something like that yourself, you should do it. You have to actively switch to ChatGPT 4 to really get the magic. But it blows my mind, at least, and the implications are huge. And I think there are some clear implications of this for us as investors. What are you guys thinking about this? We've talked about it a few times, but it is such a big topic. It's one of the big society revolutions of our time, of our life. Communication and internet has been one, crypto is one, but AI is definitely one. Also, we will have maybe a handful of those through our lifetime, and this is one of them. What are your thoughts after reflecting on this? Who wants to start?
I can jump in.
I have plenty of thoughts. Yeah, go, James, please. I was going to say I have a lot of thoughts, but I'd rather not go first.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember talking to some people just a mere 1 or 2 years ago, in college, talking about coming out of college, jumping into a white collar job, earning $200,000 a year, just right out of college. I think those days are over. I think the key really is very clear what AI enables. It enables people to be 3x more productive, which when you extrapolate that out, that gives you an idea of the impact for many industries, whether, we've already seen things like checkout clerks and bank tellers, etc., changing, but this is going to impact legal services, government roles, anything in statistics and finance, door-to-door selling, etc. So I think the big message for people is it is definitely going to have a huge impact. One of the things that I find very irresponsible by the Fed is they're purposely destroying demand and destroying jobs, moving into such a transformational time. and it's giving a lot of companies the excuse to lay people off. And they're not going to hire them back once they figure out what AI is. That's my biggest concern. But talking about the good news for a second, I think anybody out there right now, you got to think about what you can do that AI can't and redesign your processes. Companies need to redesign their process by infusing AI into kind of the workflow of what people do. But if you are competing with AI and you turn a blind eye to it, it will bite you in the butt. That's just my take.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I tend to agree with James there in the fact that you either are going to learn how to use it or you're going to become marginalized. But I mean, my take is not really that we're going to see massive job destruction. I think that we'll see increased capabilities of humans, increased productivity, and the people who understand it will do exceptionally well. And we'll just basically see a renaissance or an industrial revolution of entrepreneurship and people innovating and creating new things. Like, we have so many examples in history where the first reaction to a new technology was it's over for humans, right? And it's never been the case. Humans are incredibly fluid and find a way. And I really think that AI is just going to unleash a huge, massive wave of innovation from people. I don't think it's going to destroy jobs. I think it's actually going to create thousands and thousands of jobs in an absolute new industry of AI that we didn't see before. I mean, obviously, I was in music for years, and I love to give the example when talking about the music industry. People don't realize that actually, for a very long time before there was recorded music, there was obviously live musicians. That's how they made their living. And when the first records started playing on the radio, there was a huge pushback from the music industry of this new technology because to play on the radio stations used to actually pay the bands to come and play live. So they thought they were never going to make money again because records were going to steal their jobs. And what ended up happening, obviously, was that the proliferation of recorded music was the explosion of the music industry worldwide. You saw thousands, tens of thousands of new musicians and ways to make money selling that music. I think AI will be very, very similar, right? And so I don't have much fear that it's going to lead to job destruction. I think it's just going to lead to new industries we can't even imagine yet.
Yeah, I do tend to disagree with you a little bit there, Scott, because I already see the impact of it, especially on the technology side, the developer side of the world. In Silicon Valley, that it has taken a huge impact. And even if you look at the gaming industry and how it's impacting that is also very pronounced just in a few months. But just I think the easy way to think of AI is I call it a cognitive explosion. So basically, it expands the human brain in a big way. And it can make somebody, like somebody, I think it was the guys in the All In podcast, they said it turns a 1x programmer into a 10x programmer. You talking to the two tech guys in the room here, see what those guys think about that.
Ivan, you want to say something? Otherwise, I have a huge thoughts about this also.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with what you guys said. I personally think the same. But I heard an interesting thought the other day. I think it was in All In podcast where they said that everyone who is not in AI, basically like us, we're positive, we're bullish. We think that this is going to be great and empower humans. And everyone who is like a scientist, they're saying that, no, this is like nuclear weapon kind of tech. We need to really be careful. I thought that was kind of true. But subconsciously, I agree with what you guys say as well. It's more of a tool. This and that is going to empower us. Let's see. But I thought that was an interesting thing.
That's interesting. I have a very strong opinion, actually. I think there will be huge disruption. I kind of side with James here. I think that there will be a huge bulk of jobs in the midsection that will disappear. So either you kind of climb higher up in the value chain, where what everyone is trying to learn here, what we four here are trying to learn, we're trying to learn more about investment, we're trying to, be higher up in the value chain. That I think will remain, and perhaps people who do that will get more and more leverage. So fewer people will get more leverage. Maybe the analogy is that like the superstar artists, when they can sell albums, they can sell crazy amount of albums. They can reach more people than they ever could if they have to physically go to each king and play the guitar or something like that. You cannot reach everyone, but here suddenly you can reach everyone. And so I think it would be like that. And then also the base, say like a guy who drove by here a while ago collecting garbage or working in the cafes or restaurants and so on, those will remain also. But then a lot, I think, of white-collar jobs who are really comfortable today. They think they're really great. They're working on something very intellectual. I think many of those are going to disappear. And if they don't do anything, if they don't kind of move up or move sideways into something else, I think it's gonna blow up in their face. And I think it will happen soon, like in a couple of years. So, but I think
I don't even think it'll take a couple of years. No.
Sorry, yeah, please.
Sorry, I was going to say, I don't even think it'll take a couple of years. I think we're talking about already seeing it in weeks to months because of the exponential growth of it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. So I think that congrats to everyone who's watching here, because investment is really at the top of the value chain. So congrats everyone trying to learn more about that. I think those are the kinds of things that's a right action to take. Now let's switch gears and let's get more technical. We're going to hand over to Ivan today. He had a very long and very detailed show on this morning. I watched it. I think it was great. I think you should watch it. But what is happening? What was the message from Vitalik in his letter? Ivan, can you explain this to everyone here?
We have something very interesting happening on Ethereum right now, and it's called restaking. You guys should look at a project called Eigenlayer, which is growing a lot. It's this concept that we can basically take ETH staking, but instead of just having validators follow the consensus rules in order to earn a reward and in order to get basically in order to get their block into the blockchain, we can add more rules to the consensus. I mean, that's the whole idea with restaking. Let me give you an example. So right now, if you are an ETH validator, you follow the consensus rule, but if you use Eigenlayer, you can then also make validators do extra tasks. For example, having price feeds on the blockchain. So instead of using Chainlink, the idea is that why don't validators also put price feed into smart contract? Why don't validators do all kinds of other things? And there's this whole new ecosystem being created around this concept that let's make validators do more things. And then in order to get rewards, validators need to not only follow the consensus rules, but also, for example, fetch price feed. And then there are different rewards around this that if you join restaking, you could earn more as a validator. And this has been growing for the past few months. I first learned about Eigenlayer a few months ago. And the concept is super interesting because why should we have Chainlink when we can have oracles on the same level as validation of consensus? So the initial response was very positive, and that's why this restaking has grown a lot. But Vitalik yesterday created a very important post where he said that, listen, we got to be very careful here, because if validators can now be slashed for putting wrong data on the blockchain that is now subjective, because, for example, fiat pricing is not fully objective. And he had an example there where, what if there is a political crisis in a country, like Brazil he has in this blog post, and now there are two fiats in the same country with the same ticker, with two different governments that are operating at the same time in the same country. And basically what this can lead to is a network split, that some validators will get slashed because they're putting one version of the currency, and others will create a separate chain because they read another feed. So it's basically this merge with the real world that he's very worried about. And you guys should look into restaking. I do a whole drawing of this on my channel this morning. But the idea is that with restaking, we now have validators doing more things than just validating the consensus rules. For example, putting the fiat prices on chain. And that in itself is a big danger that Vitalik speaks about. And the thing is, this can happen to any chain. You can do the same thing on Solana as well, where you can say to Solana validators, listen, instead of just confirming normal blocks, put price feeds on the blockchain, put other things, because this is a general concept. We can have validators do all kinds of extra tasks to earn more rewards, with the same downside, which is that if they don't follow these extra rules, they lose their stake, which is like in ETH and Solana and other blockchains. So that's quite an interesting debate that I think every blockchain should listen to, because if restaking gets too big, we have political forces in the real world affecting blockchain and how blockchain forks and so on and so forth. Let me know if this makes sense. It's way easier to explain it on a blackboard, but I can also answer questions if you guys have some questions about it.
I think I understood it. It's very simple, actually. It's like right now, the blockchain validation, it's a mathematical task.
Yes.
right? You do something mathematical. It's correct or it's not correct. While a lot of people have come up with the idea, why don't we do the mathematical thing, but we also do something from the real world? We bring like the oracle idea into this. But then it could be up for debate, because if in the real world things are not mathematical anymore, there's different opinions, there's political things. There could be, even if we say that the government can decide, okay, but what if there's two governments? What if this is like not in agreement? And suddenly the whole crypto idea, which was based on math, falls apart. Then
Yep.
Yes.
there is no,
And
is
the- and
that
the
right to say?
Yeah, that's a good summary. And the big problem is that if you don't follow the consensus rules, you lose your stake, you get slashed. And the same thing is with restaking. If you put the wrong data on the blockchain that everyone else doesn't agree with, for example, you feed the wrong price feed into the blockchain, you also lose your stake. That's the idea with restaking. And the problem is, of course, like you say, CTO, what if there is not a single agreement about the real world data? What is the price feed for this currency? Like Vitalik says, in Brazil, if Brazil has two governments and they fork their own fiat, and if there is disagreement, half of the chain will get slashed. They're gonna lose the stake. So you have this split in the network, which is impossible to put back together. And that's the big danger with this subjective data coming into consensus.
Yeah, it was interesting to see as well. One of the things that I thought was interesting, when you read between the lines, you can see that Vitalik is concerned about many things too. You know, not just the consensus overload, but also the importance of layer twos to keep Ethereum scaling, and suggestions like timing transactions for off-peak times, you know, finding a way to block spam transactions and such. But getting back real quick to the Oracle thing, I think it's very important that an Oracle stays external, like an objective third party. If you have validators in control of verifying real world information, that can be very dangerous, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the most shocking thing, I was mildly shocked that this was even having traction. I felt that this is so obviously completely stupid. Of course, it's not going to work if you bring in like the external world into the blockchain validation algorithm. It's going to succumb by the complexity of the real world. It's not going to work anymore. We're not going to have one Ethereum or one Solana or one any protocol. They're going to fork endlessly. And I'm mildly shocked that there's so big part of community that's kind of pushing for this, that Vitalik has to go out and write this very strong letter and so on and so forth. And he's not the boss, right?
The problem is that, exactly, Vitalik cannot do anything, because it's not like Ethereum is broken, because the same thing can be done on Solana, it can be done on any other chain, where instead of downloading Geth, which is the standard client for ETH, you can download another client which has these extra rules, where your stake is affected by extra rules, and then you're also more incentivized to use it. And it can happen on any chain. That's why it will be interesting to see how it evolves, because people normally adopt whatever is easiest, wherever they make most money, and they don't really think ahead too much. So it will be interesting to see how the validators play this. If they think long-term or they think short-term, and then they install this modified clients that have a bunch of extra rules. But yeah, that's definitely something to speak about, because the more people know about it, the more people are against it and know the dangers of it, the more social push there is against it. Just like most people know that if one mining pool controls the whole blockchain, for example in Bitcoin, it's bad, we need the same thing with restaking.
Yeah, so a huge item actually that's happening now. So if you're technically interested, definitely read this article and join the debate, because this is important. It's not only for
just to add to something else. Like James said, there are a few other things that Vitalik says there. For example, another danger is that if an layer 2 solution becomes too big, and they start saying that we're so big, which means that if something goes wrong, Ethereum will roll back the chain because we're so big. We will see a lot of these social consensus tests coming along. What if the biggest L2 has a big bug, big problem? Do we roll back the chain or do we not roll back the chain? What if Chainlink has a problem and all DeFi gets wrong data? Everyone is wrongly liquidated. Do we roll back the chain or do we not roll back the chain? We haven't really had this big tests of social consensus because it's going to be difficult. Chainlink is powering so much DeFi. There are billions and billions of dollars. If something is wrong there's going to be a strong push to reverse the chain, to remove liquidations and so on and so forth. So that's also part of that article that he says, listen, don't count on ETH to be reversed because you have a big, massive DeFi thing or a layer 2 solution, and you trust us to revert the chain if something goes wrong.
And I think because the big enemy here really can be complexity. This can quickly get so complicated that it gets hard to maintain the code, that starts getting too many bugs, too many problems, and suddenly it falls apart. That's one thing that I really like, coming back to, say, Solana, more approach versus layer 2 Ethereum approach. That's one thing that I always liked with the monolithic approach more, that it's possible to make it more simple, more, straightforward, and perhaps less prone to problems. But
one throat to choke, as they say.
Yeah. Very interesting. We move forward a little bit because there's a lot of coins coming up. The recent narrative has been the meme coins. Something, Ivan, you picked up on early. You said that it's the community which is the valuable element more than the technology or anything else, which has turned out pretty correct during this time. And you said it on this show. So what is actually the current status now? Does fundamentals even matter? Or is this all narrative-based, marketing-based, speculation-based, meme coin-based, community-based going forward? Does fundamentals matter?
I have developed my thought here. You not only need the community, you need the cult. Okay, if you have a cult, that's very good. It's like XRP cult. They're cultish. Or I follow the Hex and Pulse cult. Like Eric Wall, he said that Hex and Pulse is like trailer park people cult, okay? that are organizing themselves financially on an EVM chain. There is something funny with that. And it's kind of like, you definitely need a cult. The stronger the cult, the better. With meme coins, I don't know how much of a cult it actually is, like with Pepper, for example. Maybe it will sustain. Shiba, you can say maybe it is a cult, but not really. But definitely, I think you, CTO, said it as well, that we can all just copy-paste tech. I mean, tech is not a big thing. It's all open source. You can copy-paste anything. It's, can you make a cult around it that loves it, that's going to hodl it, going to stake it for 10 years in the future and not sell it, and be through thick and thin. If the SEC sues, like, for example, with Ripple, they fight for years and years and years, and they have huge communities around this whole case. Like, for example, you look at Ripple, they have whole YouTubers covering the legal case step by step. I don't even see them because I'm not in that XRP bubble. But sometimes when I just get into that bubble, I'm very surprised how strong it is. It's kind of like with Pulse and Hex as well, that there are full streamers. They're streaming every day, doing content. I mean, that's the key. And of course, we do content about ETH and Solana and all of that. That's the most important thing. Do we have the community or a cult? Because community may be a bit short term, or no? Because tech, you can copy paste it. Everything else, you cannot copy paste. And the
James, what do you think here? Because you've been maybe the strongest proponent of fundamentals, the quality, the elements of the technology. Will that prevail in the end, or is that era over? Now it's only memes.
Actually,
it doesn't work to screen share. Your voice gets garbled.
We got robot James.
Exactly. Roll back.
Can't hear you. You have to stop screen sharing.
Oh my God! Wow. It already broken. Okay, there's a really cool slide that I had there, and it talks about kind of crypto, and it breaks down meme coins and how it's all speculation around a crazy narrative. And then you have non-meme coins. It's basically 99% narrative and speculation and 1% fundamentals. And that's one of the issues with crypto is it's the average investor is not a sophisticated veteran of Wall Street, deep analyst. Even the Wall Street analysts today are kind of missing the boat on many kind of narratives and technologies. But yeah, it's all narrative driven, and fundamentals don't matter at all. But there will come a time when they will. That's what we need to be ready for. Otherwise, you are just risking all of your money playing with things that are purely speculative. In fact, I think it was maybe somebody in your channel this morning, Scott, said, politics is led by narratives when Biden was talking at the G7, words to that effect. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, everything is narrative.
Thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, everything in the world is narrative, religion, cult, shared belief, right? I mean, money, politics, religion, all of them only exist because enough people believe in them to sort of perpetuate it into the future. Clearly the case with crypto. I would say that, first of all, James, I can't believe you sent your AI to talk to us. Clearly you're not here in human, and your job has been replaced based on that voice we just heard. But with AI, crypto, all of these things, I really believe that fundamentals here with crypto are almost irrelevant. I think we're going to have 3 to 5, maybe 10 things that really, truly succeed. And the rest of it is literally just people fooling themselves into believing they're part of a community when they really just want price to pump, right? And the minute that people get dumped on, that passionate community they were a part of and that cult that was so important to them absolutely disappears, right? That's why 99% of NFT projects are zero. And that's why in this cycle, the meme coins are a little different. In the past, you sort of had these people, we launched meme coins, not we launched in this community meme coins, and people really believed that they were important, right? This time it seems like they've just given up and are literally just admitting that we're creating things out of thin air to pump and get value, and it's a complete joke, and maybe it's a way to rage against the machine or push back. But I think that, I mean, largely you guys know I believe this at this point, but I think that 99% of what's being created is a joke. It's a bad look for the community. It's going to inevitably get us in more trouble with regulators and legislators. And I think it's just kind of embarrassing, to be quite honest. And so I don't think fundamentals matter at all beyond Bitcoin. Even just having that ETH conversation, I was listening to you guys because obviously I'm not a technologist and I'm here to learn just like anyone else. But like, if we really have to worry about ETH breaking or any of these breaking, if we're really not at the point yet where we can even confidently say, hey, our consensus mechanism works and can't be messed with and is stable, we have a major problem. We have a major problem. If everything we have outside of Bitcoin can be broken by a bunch of jokesters who are just trying to, meme their way into, then we need to rethink this entire thing.
But isn't crypto supposed to be the exception, where we have like mathematical truths, and then
It's obviously not, though. That's right, but it's not. If you can break Ethereum by restaking and the consensus mechanism changes, then we are completely wrong in our former premise, and we need to rethink it and reconsider it.
Rationally, we give them different options, and people will act rationally.
Well, I mean, I think a good analogy is imagine in Bitcoin if everyone just used the same mining pool. It's not something that Bitcoin can change. It's just that we all know not to use the same mining pool because then they control everything. So restaking is not exactly the same, but it's in the same kind of category. That it's not something that the blockchain can change. But of course, if more people know about that, it's not that great. People will not do it. But listen, you gotta have the cult which can handle minus 90%. That's why I now love Solana more than ever, because that, and you, James, are definitely part of that cult because it's freaking down 90%. They're still here. They're building. That's like the best. That's the best when they're here after 90%. It's kind of like with penguins. I'm in another cult. I'm in several cults, but I'm in another cult, which is the penguins, the Pudgy penguin. This thing also dumped like 80%. They're still here. As soon as they see someone with the Pudgy penguin on Twitter, they're retweeting, they're liking. That is the best. Actually, Twitter, you can test for cult instantly. If you mention their coin, are they super excited even when it's down? But then, then there are many things that don't have this hot community. Then they just die. But there is the litmus test for the community is minus 90%. Are they still here or not? That's why now I'm maybe the most bullish in Solana than ever. And many Solana maxis, they're like, oh, Ivan, why are you so bullish now? You weren't before. Well, because before Solana didn't show that it can survive minus 90% and still climb back and still survive and not fall out of top 20. And now it has. So fantastic.
Yeah, I want to just add one stipulation on being a cult member. You need to be kind of all in on an asset. So Solana's 5% of my crypto, Ethereum is about 15%, and Bitcoin's 80%. And I have way more Tesla than I do Bitcoin. Just for the record, everybody. So,
That's
I just
another
want to
thing,
make that clear.
Because people have their own perspective of all of us, and the same with, I thought that you were like all in Solana, James, but see, even I'm wrong.
No.
Because people think that the only thing that I'm known for is that they respect the pump thing, which is one of the biggest things. But you've been in crypto for years and years and years. People remember one thing, and that's the respect the pump. And in your case, probably people remember that you're pro Solana, but it's only 5% of your
I'm the
portfolio.
Solana help desk. Because I think I was the first YouTuber to start talking about Solana. I was looking for the ETH killer, and that was it. So it's a crazy world.
Right.
Absolutely
And I
insane.
think-
By the way,
just
speaking
add one-
of risks,
So, no, please
I
continue.
just want to say something that's really been alarming me for quite some time. And I always felt that, supercomputers would get to the, 100,000, 100 million qubit level by 2028 or so. And hopefully that by then Bitcoin would be quantum proofed. But there was a release from Johnny here. Then the newsroom from IBM. IBM is launching a $100 million partnership with global universities to develop a unique 100,000 qubit quantum-centric computer. By the way, you can break SHA-256 with only about 1,000 qubits. The most powerful supercomputer on Earth today, I think, is about 3 or 5 qubits. So that is kind of alarming for the Bitcoin community. Again, it's ways off, and they may never pull it off. But that's one thing we always need to keep on our radar when we talk about fragility of crypto. That's something we need to think about.
I would be more worried that it can launch the nuclear codes or hack an election, but yes, it's definitely worth looking at. I think if we have quantum computing at that power, every fundamental system needs to be altered and changed to protect it, and Bitcoin would be a drop in the bucket for the considerations there.
Exactly. It's like a Carrington event, nuking every semiconductor we have on Earth. We got bigger problems. So
Yeah,
you're dead right, Scott.
Yeah, consensus mechanism is broken. Well, clearly we could just start restaking and break it without a quantum computer, right? So it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Just one more word on this with, does fundamentals matter? We also have to remember that most coins don't work out. They start and they're in a downtrend and they never come out of the downtrend. I did a little bit of statistic in preparation. So currently 73% of coins that have a listing, they're in downtrend. 16% are in an uptrend, and the remaining are neutral. And if comparing against BTC, even though BTC has kind of backed up a little bit, it's only 14% of coins that are in uptrend versus BTC. This is out of coins that have a listing on CoinMarketCap, for example. So we are looking for like the few ones that are not the majority. The majority of coins are garbage. They don't have enough following. They don't have any particular technology. They don't really have anything. It's just someone who launched something. They managed to pump it out. They managed to dump on some people, and then it's going to go down. It's going to continue to go down and until it's dead. That's the average coin in crypto. But then there are a few projects that actually make it, and those are the ones we're trying to find, all of us.
In fact, that's a great one as well. CTO Willy Woo put together something about the half-life of crypto. And I think that's where the word degen came from, the degenerative nature of crypto. Basically, every 4 years, crypto on average halves. And eventually, do the math, 8 years, it's gone.
Yeah.
So
let's pick up the speed a little bit. We already talked partly about the regions in the intro there. I think maybe we pass over that one and move forward instead. The dollar. What is happening with the dollar? Dollar strength index has picked up a little bit. The yield curve is, breaking out. The 2-year yield is having a breakout at the same time as dollar fiat seems to be in greater problem than ever. This is, as an engineer, this is pretty hard to understand. I'm really curious about all your perspectives here. What is actually happening with the macro and the fiat dollar? James, do you want to start? You always have good insights on this.
Or Scott just had his macro show. Over to you, Scott. I can go because Jim Rogers came out, I think, over the weekend. And he I won't mention who he used to work with in the past because that's very political, but he is kind of like a OG kind of investment guru. And he highlighted the fact that everybody around, so if you imagine the world, it's just like politics, half the world is left, half the world is right. But half the world, you could say, does not like the dollar hegemony at all. And they've all, what Jim Rogers said, they've all begun to work together to try derail the dollar and find a way to trade amongst themselves in their own currencies, and so that the US can no longer weaponize the dollar. And that was the big wake-up call after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That scared a lot of people. It's like, having dollar as a reserve currency is also a very fragile. We should have called the show Fragility, by the way. But he said also not only just you have Russia, China, you've got all these other Southeast Asian countries, you have the Islamic world, you have South America. The US doesn't have a lot of friends, and I think that's what Jim Rogers was trying to get across. And that's going to chip away at the dollar reserve currency status. And just to back it up, though, to make sure dollar's not going to zero anytime soon, it is the least dirty shirt in the laundry, as they say. So, but it is being chipped away at.
So, Scott,
yeah, I think I've said this repeatedly here, but yeah, the dollar goes to zero last, right? So if the dollar goes to zero, the world is over, in my humble opinion. So anyone who's cheering for that, just because their Bitcoin might be worth $1 million, good luck living in that world with your $1 million Bitcoin, right? But I agree that there's a concerted effort among a number of countries to reduce their reliance on the dollar, but it ain't happening anytime soon, right? I mean, even this move towards the yuan that we're hearing about and people starting to trade in it, people very easily seem to forget that yuan is pegged to the dollar. And if the yuan was free floating in its value, that would collapse instantaneously. So it still effectively settles to the dollar. So listen, I mean, as long as I can remember, I've heard about the end of the dollar. It is inevitable. Every single fiat eventually collapses. Every global reserve currency ceases to be the global reserve currency. The problem is timeline, right? And if you're predicting that to happen in the next 5 years, 10 years, I think you'll be wildly disappointed. I doubt it will happen in my lifetime, and I'm 46 years old. But I do think that we can see a decreasing reliance. I mean, to James's point, the United States doesn't have a lot of friends anymore. I think your friends in politics are only as good as how useful you are at any given moment, right? And I still think the United States is the most useful country in the world, and people will continue to rely. I would say that that could all change quicker if we actually defaulted on the debt ceiling, which I don't think will happen. But we are playing a dangerous game at this point, I would say, and there are plenty of countries waiting in the wings to try to step up. I just sort of laugh at the notion of BRICS as if it's like as strong as the G7 or it's really a true organization of countries working together. I mean, we're talking about a whole bunch of self-interested dictators who happen to just share a dislike of the United States, right? But they're not an organization that's working towards a common goal, unless that common goal is literally just to be a flea in the hair of the United States. So I don't see it happening anytime soon. I think it does inevitably happen, but I don't think you can make any vast claims or certainly investment or major decisions based on the premise that dollar dominance is going to end anytime soon.
Yeah, and there is one tiny third degree angle on this whole thing, is not only the debt ceiling stuff, but also the fact that politics are now talking. The politicians, I think, that are in power know the importance of having a strong dollar, and it's making them very nervous. And I think that's making them very anti-crypto, because that's also a threat, but that's a threat that they control. So I think that's an important angle to consider going forward. And that's why the powers that be in certain countries, Europe, central banks around the world, etc., see it as a clear threat. One of the basic things that Max Kaiser did say at the Bitcoin conference, he said a lot of things, but this was the one thing that he did say, is Bitcoin is a central bank killer. And that's what it is designed to do. And that makes the governments very nervous.
Right, but what we see governments sorry.
No, please go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, but what we see governments actually doing, if you look closer at the central bank, is, well, they still buy American debt, but they're buying gold, right? It's not like they're investing in some other currency or trying to do that. What they're doing is stacking gold in their central bank in case everything collapses, which we've seen in the past. And I think that's probably the smarter move for any of them than trying to, attack the dollar.
So what does this mean then? If we look a little bit nearer to the present then, because what you're saying here is clearly reflected. DXY, the dollar currency index or dollar strength index, has really had a recovery. It kind of support has held. It's climbed back. And the US government bond 2-year yield has, if it's closing like here today, it's breaking out into higher levels. And the reason that these two charts are important is that they both tend to be inversely correlated with, for example, Bitcoin. So if this one goes up, Bitcoin tends to go down. If this one goes down, Bitcoin tends to go up. And the same for the DXY. If this one, starts going up, Bitcoin probably goes down. If it breaks this support and starts going down, based on history, probably Bitcoin will go in the other direction. So what does this really mean? Is that why is dollar strength index recovering? Why is interest rates 2-year yield going up, you think?
I don't have an answer, but I can say that I find it really interesting that stocks have continued to be relatively strong, and so has Bitcoin, even as the dollar has continued to show strength here. I would have expected that major dollar strength in this manner would have been really heavy on the stock market, and it just hasn't.
And so also not on Bitcoin, right? It has held pretty well.
Yeah, and so usually you see sort of in these moves where the dollar makes a strong move, you see that inverse correlation that you talked about. We love to talk about the correlation of Bitcoin to risk assets or to gold, but the real truth is everything's generally inversely correlated to dollar strength, right? And that's dollar strength, obviously, against another basket of currencies, not in a vacuum. So I'm just a bit surprised, actually, that we're seeing stocks continue to hold up in this environment. I can't really tell you what's going to come, but that is a bit of an aberration from the norm.
Exactly. We are now, the S&P 500 is more short than it was before the global financial crisis. So that's like a 15-year record of shortness. So
Squeeze.
Like what Scott said, everybody is expecting the world to implode. But what people don't understand is inflation drives everything higher. And that's what we're seeing right now. Stocks go up. But you got to remember as well, the S&P 500 is driven by only 7 stocks. The other 493 are in the toilet.
Yeah. I mean, the S&P 500 here looks extremely strong. It looks like it's a point of a breakout almost on the upside. So exactly as you say, this is very curious. Is it that liquidity is coming back? They've been outside, now they're kind of coming back to more risky assets.
Well, they say there's 5 trillion on the sidelines, and what we're potentially looking at the setup here is what you showed in the chart is a potential gamma squeeze because so many people are option short. And if it breaks like 4250, 4300, they got to cover. And that takes it to 4500. And that's just the nature of markets. It's kind of fun.
So speaking of markets then, let's move on to the market that we all care so deeply about, the Bitcoin market, which drives the whole crypto market. Where are we there? Is the halving, is that what we should focus on a year from now? Or what do you guys see happening here? Is the halving cycle dead, or is it still alive? Should we ignore the noise that's happening now, the micro jitter? Look forward. What do you think?
Yeah, listen, I'm a follower of the halving cycle. And just to end the discussion we just discussed before, I want to end it with a quote from Lenin, out of everyone. but he has one good quote. And that's that there are decades where nothing happens. And there are weeks where decades happen. And also Balaji posted a picture today from a conference they had 100 years ago with 9 kings. It was like the king of UK, king of Greece, and they look so fancy. Maybe you, CCO, can go to Balaji and show it. And that was right before everything collapsed. No more kings in 10 years. And they had this massive conference just before with a picture. They were looking so nice. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thinking about the fiat system, because something is brewing. It's like you guys say, probably not tomorrow, probably maybe not in 5 years, but maybe there is going to be a few weeks where that can happen. Let's see. But in terms of Bitcoin CTO, indeed, I'm a big believer in the halving cycle. It works. It worked last year, although I thought then that it's going to be priced in, but apparently not. Listen, this year is exactly like 2019. We did a nice pump in the middle of the year, which we did now as well. Then it stopped before going to all-time highs, which it did now as well. So I'm expecting a sideways move until the halving, ranging between 20k, maybe 30k, 50. Who the hell knows? It's gonna not go to all-time high, I think, anyway. But that's my long-term perspective. That's why it's so nice. I don't really care about the short-term, because we all know it's gonna be side, or at least in my mind, I'm thinking that we all know that it's gonna go sideways, and let's see what the hell's gonna happen after the halving. What do you guys think?
Well, there's only one thing I trust in this world, and that's numbers. So first of all, if I wish I could share a slide, because I did prepare a couple of slides for you, but one is the Bitcoin adoption slide. If you look at the number of Bitcoin non-zero addresses, it's a chart that's up and to the right, and it continues going up. And if you look at the number of transactions, it's even more vertical. We now have about 850 million transactions on the Bitcoin network. So the reason that's important is because of Metcalfe's law. The more users there are on the network, the more valuable the network. Okay, and once they cut the supply in half, the demand remains equal, the price goes up. That's just economic law. The other thing, just to put it in perspective, you rewind the clock to exactly 4 years ago today, the price of Bitcoin was $3,122. We've gone up 9x since 4 years ago. Okay, and we are at that point in the cycle. So that's all you need to know, everybody. It's that simple.
That's very thoughtful. Let's take some questions here also. Any thoughts on the US resorting to yield curve control relating to what we talked about before? I barely understand what that means. I hope one of you can answer that.
James, you want to go ahead? I mean, I think they will resort to yield curve controls. That's what inevitably happens when you can't use QE or QT as effectively, and it's
what does it mean?
It's not worth really getting. It's not really worth getting deeply into it. But I mean, if you just take a look, anyone who wants to, at what's happened in Japan. I mean, it's a monetary action. Just to give you the definition, whereby a central bank purchases variable amount of government bonds or other financial assets in order to target interest rates at a certain level. So effectively, it's the same thing as quantitative easing, but specific to the bond market to make sure that you have an interest rate that you're set at and want to target. So I do think, I mean, you look at Japan, they've effectively flattened the entire bond market and killed it over the last 10 to 15 years by utilizing yield curve controls, by basically saying we'll buy every single bond on the market no matter what with a 10-year or less expiry or whatever. And I think that is the direction that these things usually head.
Yeah. And in fact, you could also argue, and I always forget the acronym, and maybe Scott, you can help me here, the BTFP program is, in my opinion, technically a version of yield curve control. They basically, overcame the problem of the asset liability mismatch, the time to expiration exposure of near $1 trillion, whatever it was, by the banks, and they funded that, which is like printing money. They are also, there's this magical thing called a debt ceiling at $31.4 trillion. They're $300 billion above that level already because they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's all forms of yield curve control. They're just moving money around, moving digits around. So it's happening. Debt will increase. There's no going back. It's a doom cycle. It's just going to take a lot of time for things to really smash. But it's an ugly situation. I would not want to be a central banker. It'd be the last job I'd want on this planet. There's no fixing it.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to apply for that job.
And then one other thing, because it ties back to the kind of AI discussion we had at the beginning. Literally, it is going to cause a little bit of havoc, which is going to drive a lot more universal basic income, which means government funding people to keep them alive, giving them benefits and programs. And last I saw, I think there's about 45 million people in the United States on food stamps. Think about that. It's nearly a sixth. 1 in 6 people are on food stamps in this country, and it's going to get a whole lot worse.
Well, if you ask Joe Biden, he'll tell you that that's because of wealthy crypto traders.
It is.
He literally just had that quote where he said, yeah, we want to close tax loopholes on the wealthy and crypto traders, and the Republicans want to, get rid of programs that feed starving children.
Yeah.
So, guys, in case you're wondering, it's crypto's fault that people are starving in the United States. Has nothing to do with the fact that we have a $900 billion a year defense budget, 70% of which is missing. We don't know where it went. And it has nothing to do with the trillions that we've wasted on other programs and on errors in the tax code and thing. It's because of the wash sale rules for crypto. We're starving children everywhere, all over the world, guys. You should feel terrible.
Yeah. And big food, big pharma, military-industrial complex are the people that fund the people in office. And that's who they bow to. So it's just a funny loop. And the good thing about the world today is people are beginning to understand how everything actually works. And it's a wake-up call. Again, back to your show this morning, Scott. Your colleague, is it David?
Dave Weisberger, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he said one thing that was very pertinent. He said the bull market trigger or catalyst is when people wake up to what's going on.
I was assuming liquidity.
He said when people start understanding exactly how everything is working.
Oh, for Bitcoin, certainly, yes.
Yeah. That's the bull market catalyst. When the penny drops within the masses and they discover how fiat really is a problem and governments are a problem, that will propel things north exponentially. And I agree with him. So.
Yeah, I remain positive to Bitcoin long-term, short-term as well. It is definitely hesitation in the market. If we look at the price chart, there is a short-term rejection here from the resistance. We are getting head and shoulders in support, but in head and shoulders pattern that seems to break support. But if you're zooming out, these are really micro movements. I don't think it really matters. The trend has not turned down. I remain positive that this will resolve itself in the direction of the dominant trend, which is up, and that we eventually will have a breakout. And my guess is also that we do break all-time highs into next spring sometime towards the halving time period. So that's my guess also. I don't think that this is over at all. I think it's a hesitation. There's macro movements. There's been some dollar regaining the strength that has put some pressure. But as several of you pointed out, actually both stocks and crypto have held up pretty well, perhaps because liquidity is coming back. So I remain very positive. Should we take a few more comments and questions? Could a Ripple win turn the market? What do you think?
I
don't think
so.
I think it would help. Oh, you think so? Go ahead, and then I'll argue.
No, I think so because it's gonna be a big relief of uncertainty. Markets don't like uncertainty. If Ripple wins, we're gonna have a lot more certainty, where we can look at Ripple and use it as a precedent for how courts should rule. And if there is any similarity between your project and what Ripple did, you may get a free pass. And if you want to do a new project, you can just do what Ripple did, as close as possible. So that's going to be important. And then also, if they can expose more of the internal discussions between SEC executives, because that was the big that is currently the big debate, whether the court will disclose internal SEC communication where they themselves don't know what the hell is a security. And that's the thing that Ripple wants to make public, that it's unreasonable for us in crypto to know what is a security when they themselves don't know in their internal communication. So let's see, over to you, Scott. For the rebuttal.
No, it's not even a rebuttal. I mean, I tend to agree in the short term that it would be meaningful for the market. But if you understand how these lawsuits go, they basically go back to the SEC and say, you can't determine it a security based on these specific criteria that you present, and the SEC can just go back and come up with a completely different narrative and start it again. It's kind of like with the Grayscale. People believe that if Grayscale beats the SEC in the GBTC case, that all of a sudden GBTC becomes an ETF. No, it just says that the SEC gets to present a new reason not to make GBTC into an ETF. So I think that the market in the short term would find it very optimistic, but it doesn't eliminate all of these times that the Gary Gensler and the SEC have deemed things security or implied that they are in all of their other motions. But it may make the SEC a little more hesitant to go after cases like this. I think it would be good. Main point, though, is I still think the macro cycles and what's happening in the world are going to be much more impactful than the results of the Ripple case. So even if we see short-term movement, I don't think that sends the market to new all-time highs or anything like that. I think it would be somewhat temporary, but very much welcomed.
Do you think it could be impactful? Because, for example, with this Hinman speech, as I understand, because SEC goes after these products and said that you did wrong in the past. Ripple, you did wrong in, what was it, 2012, 2013, and you should have understood better. But then this Hinman speech turns out that the then SEC director, he actually said at one point that he think Ethereum was not a security, for example. And then then regardless of the situation today, it's maybe less reasonable than to say that you did wrong in the past if they actually in the past said that it was okay. So I guess that's the argument. If they win this, then would it make the old projects immune, like Ripple or Ethereum or something like that? No.
I don't think it would make them immune, but I think that it would make it less likely that the SEC decides to go after them, right? Because each case is unique. We've seen that the SEC is more likely to just deem everything blindly a security rather than go into the individual cases. So, I mean, maybe it would make a big difference, but we all know that there's a bigger case coming, which is going to be Coinbase over very similar things. So I just think that I don't think that the SEC is going to turn on a dime on their view on crypto because they win or lose the Ripple case. And frankly, I don't think any of it's going to matter until we have a completely new regime in the United States. Till Gensler's gone, the SEC changes over. Potentially we switch parties. I don't really know the answer, but nothing's getting done in this version of the U.S. government.
Crypto is writing, America is doomed. I don't think so, but I do think that they are a little bit shooting themselves in the foot here with this regulation. And I think it is an opportunity for other countries and regions to attract some of these companies. And speaking of the tax, they're referring to the Biden tax. I mean, these companies are paying tax, employing people, and then the crypto traders, if they're making profit, are paying a lot of tax. And I imagine it's good for America that they are paying that tax in America instead of moving to some other country and paying that tax there. If skipping the narrative and looking at what the actual truth. Do we have any other key topics that we forgot to cover?
So one tiny little thing that sometimes people forget is people look at the US, even crypto investors out of Europe, and they look at the US and think that's what's driving the crypto bus. But when you look at Bitcoin spot volume, for example, I think so far in April 2023, about 425 billion of that is out of Asia, only 60 billion out of the US, 15 billion out of South America, and 20 out of Europe. So basically, it's 72% Asia. That's what's controlling this market. So I think for us to know where the puck is going to be, we need to keep a very close eye on what's happening in Asia. And I know you had another question regarding where you believe the center of the next whatever conferences, etc., should be. Look east. Yeah. That's all I say.
Absolutely.
Scott, I think you.
No,
you
absolutely.
agree?
I mean, I live there.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I think that the United States is huge in perception because of regulation and because they tend to lead in policy. But as far as trading, our liquidity is already gone after the banking crisis. It was already diminishing before that. And for actual power to move the market or have a dramatic impact, it's long over here and it ain't coming back anytime soon.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I believe in Asia very much. I've lived half my professional life in Asia, and I'm very impressed. I remain very impressed. It's even though there's been a lot of banning Bitcoin, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, I don't think that's going to happen. They like people moving there, innovation, paying tax. They don't like losing control, so that's the dilemma. That's like the back and forth. But at the end of the day, a lot of things in Asia revolves around money, and here is money to be made. There's companies to be attracted, there's investors to be attracted, and all those people are going to pay a lot of tax. They're going to attract a lot of people that will pay a lot of tax and generate business for the country. And they are positive to change, while many countries in the West, we're kind of a little tired. We think it was better yesterday and so on. That sentiment isn't really there in Asia. People are positive to change. They feel every year it's getting better, and in 5 years it's going to be even better. And that sentiment, I think, will move forward. When walking around in a country like Vietnam or something, everyone loves crypto. Everyone is, has been trading crypto. They all like making money, and they're all very positive. I think I never met anyone there who said that they think crypto is bad. So, definitely. James, did you want to add something?
No. I have a lot of thoughts, but just, Bitcoin. I mean, one of the funny things that I've noticed in this year or two, anytime there's a crisis, like a banking crisis, Bitcoin goes up. So I'm wondering, will the debt ceiling crisis cause a spike in Bitcoin this week? Just a random thought. What do you guys think?
How many days is it left? Aren't they supposed to go bankrupt like any day? No one knows, right? Because it's not known exactly.
About 2 weeks. Yeah. Goldman says the June 8th or 9th they would predict, but it's on the edge. You don't want to go down to a zero balance in your bank account for the United States government. Last I checked.
I know that we all think that it's impossible that they default and that they're gonna extend the debt ceiling, and probably yes. But there's something about Joe Biden. I feel that he's so bad at negotiation. I mean, he has his views, and that's it. It's kind of like that on the world arena, but also probably in these discussions with with Republicans. So that's the only thing that makes me. Man, maybe it's gonna happen. Who knows? But I don't know. I just feel that he's not that good at negotiating. But probably they'll figure it out, and the crisis will be averted.
Yeah, but I think the general aversion against the governments that have kind of grown the past, not just now, but the past couple of years. In the wake of the COVID handling around the world and so on, I think those kind of narratives do help a narrative like Bitcoin, if we're talking about that, which kind of was presented as an alternative, like a better money. And we lost Scott.
At the end of the day, it's world reserve currency. They're playing chicken with world reserve currency. Who's going to be the last to... Who's going to be the first one to give in? The Republicans, Democrats, who's going to give in? There's something about that doesn't feel too good if it's going to be the world reserve currency. So it's another nail in the coffin, or another crack maybe in the armor. But let's see. At the end of the day, it's not going to be a big global event if they just increase the ceiling.
I don't think so either. And I think one positive note that really seeing from Europe is that we saw the France news that they want to be positive, attract crypto companies, and the whole MiCA regulation I think will be extremely positive for crypto in the whole Europe. That there is a clarity. That's what US doesn't have, right? They have Gary Gensler saying that, your mother is a security and everything can be a security, and there's no rules. No one knows what to do, so they don't dare to go on conferences and say anything because it could be turned against them later. They're suing everyone, going after everyone. Everyone who's mentioned crypto has said Bitcoin is good. Okay, maybe Ethereum is good. Maybe it was a security. You should go to jail now. And
straight to jail.
Straight to jail. Don't pass go. Don't collect any money. Straight to jail. While here is coming then clear regulation in Europe, so people know what to do. You have to, if you want to run an exchange, you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you want to do on-ramp, you do these things. If you want to have a crypto company, you do this and that. So that's very good. That's what's lacking in the US, and I feel that might help US as well, because they're going to feel the competition suddenly, and that might help there as well, I think. Now, all right, any closing thoughts? Otherwise, we're over time. 16
Fantastic,
minutes.
guys. Always a pleasure.
And everybody's cool and calm in the audience too, which is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a crazy week last week, especially with all the ledger stuff and everything else going on. But things are holding up.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we'll
exactly.
get through
There's
them.
so many things we haven't touched upon. Ledger is one, and I mean, we can't cover everything in 1 hour in overtime. But this was really great. I always look forward to Mondays. I always learn something myself. I hope you learned something, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to these 3 great channels, and see you on next Monday on one other channel.
Thank you, Sergio. Thank you, Ivan.
Bye,
Have
bye,
a great
guys.
week, guys.
See
Bye.
you.
Hej då.